This is the Steve Shriver Podcast, where entrepreneur, adventurer, and community activist Steve Shriver shares what he's learned on his journey so you can make it in business and make it good. The big topic for this episode:
Dan Bensema of Luna Venture Partners is here, and we're talking finance and strategy and wealth.
We'll be right back. The Steve Shriver Podcast is brought to you by Ecolips, the original organic lip balm. Use the promo code PODCAST20 for 20% off your first order on ecolips.com. Ecolips, all-natural organic lip balm, deeply connected with nature, applying beneficial organic ingredients to better people's lives. A proud certified B Corp, founded in 2003. Ecolips, spread the good. And spread the promo code PODCAST20 into that promo code box. It's good for 20% off your first order on ecolips.com.
Hey, welcome to the Steve Shriver Podcast. We're sitting in New Boco in the Vault co-working space in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, filming another great episode of the Steve Shriver Podcast. I'm in here with Andy Solhoff.
Hey, Steve. How are you?
Great, Andy. Thanks for getting all this tech set up, man.
You know, I love equipment, and I'm excited to be expanding to video for the podcast, really.
Yeah. So it's awesome. So now we've got all these different angles and whatnot. And then today's episode is pretty special, and I still haven't figured out if we have to pay you to be on our show or not. But we've got a very special guest. Dan Bensema of Luna Venture Partners is here, and we're talking finance and strategy and wealth and all things.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
and
welcome.
You can just buy me a beer afterwards. That's enough.
Oh, cool. Okay,
All right.
Perfect. I like
We
that.
can do that.
Definitely. So, So I guess if you don't mind, what exactly do you do?
So the short version is we help business owners really develop and manage strategies, and the whole thing we're trying to accomplish is building the business up beyond the owner. Right, so we're working with people who they're motivated, they're doing good things, and they really want to bring it to another level. And
Nice.
You know, not that we know more than they do about the business or the industry, but we have a different skill set that we've used in our lives in the past, and it complements all the good things they're doing. And kind of professionalize, systematize the business, and get it to a different level of success or value that just might not happen otherwise.
Right. Okay. So before we get into the framework of how that all works, how did you get into this business yourself?
Gotcha. So yeah, good question. My background was really in a lot of mergers and acquisitions. By training, I'm a CPA. I worked with Deloitte for a few years, one of the big CPA firms.
Yep.
And early on, I was like, tax returns aren't as much fun as they look like, right? So I got more into the valuation and due diligence side of the business and worked on project-based stuff and just more strategic projects. Was there for about 3 years, and then my wife and I moved out here to Cedar Rapids about 15 years ago and joined the big business world. So some of the corporate finance things, financial planning, all that kind of stuff. And again, I just gravitated towards the strategic stuff. I found a way to get involved with M&A project, and that led to another and another, and really spent the majority of my time there working in mergers and acquisitions, so helping to buy and sell businesses, joint ventures and things like that. And I just loved it. It's a combination of the financial training I have, the strategic mindset, and then working with a team to go make it happen. So
that's awesome. Like that's one of the things. So I mean, I'm a huge fan of. I've bought businesses, sold businesses, and for one, I believe you need outside expertise when you're doing this stuff, because we go so long with we only know what we know, and as a founder or a CEO owner, there's so much to learn outside of it and other perspectives. So I mean, coming in and offering that other perspective is important.
Right, and sometimes you just need a thought partner. The other day, one of my clients, we do these weekly kind of CEO sessions. What do you need to work on? Then we have kind of a system around it. But every week, it's just what's on your agenda. And they said, this is the most valuable hour of their week. And I was like, holy crap, really? Right. But the whole thing was just taking a step back and having a thought partner, another person to bounce stuff off of. Just someone to think with and talk with and just get out of the grind. Yeah. And the same thing is when you're buying or selling a business, right? Like, get out of your own head, go back to the strategy. Does it make sense? Does it not? And what do you do about it?
Yeah. So, I mean, because ultimately, your goal is to help them have a really nice exit. Is that one of the
Ultimately, yeah.
Ultimately.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, that's great and all, but how do you, I mean, like, because, I mean, honestly, of course, that's what everybody wants. Right. But like, how do you do it?
Yeah. So, I mean, big picture, then we can kind of auger in from there. But, we start with the strategic planning framework, right? So what's important to you? Why is that important? You got to remember it's a business and it's an owner. So we don't just want to worry about the business. There's people who own this thing, and we care about them and what they care about, right? So just understand, what do you want from a business perspective? What do you want from a personal perspective, right? And then from there, we can talk more about how you.
And is that, you're saying goals like I want to end up with $100 million exit?
It might be that, right? And then things about like the vision of the business, the mission of the business as well. Yeah. And then, some people might want to, I had someone who said, I want to sell this business for $100 million tomorrow. Like, okay, well, that ain't going to happen, but why tomorrow, right? So we kind of peeled that back, and they were just burnt out, right? So we helped them hire another executive. Now they're not so burnt out. And now they have more runway to go build the business and maybe get to that 100 million. Yeah. But it's just like, why is that important to you, right? From a business, from a personal perspective.
The analysis frame, or the analysis box in your framework for success, is that?
That's kind of where you get to next. You really just start with, what's your vision? What's your mission? I know you guys are big on like brand and story, right? Yep. So there's a personal element, there's a business element, because this is their legacy too, right? So you try to understand all this business stuff has a legacy or a personal element. Just really dive in there to start with, and then that guides kind of like the North Star for all the strategic planning framework that we go through.
Very
I love
interesting. It. How do you peel that back? Do you have your set questions and stuff, or how does that go?
Well, I mean, there's questions you can ask, but it's really just being curious, right? It's being interested in the person you're talking to. It's trying to listen to understand, not listen so you can respond and show people how smart you are. It's just listening and talking, I think.
Yeah.
Do you ever have any how much pushback do you get from, all right, so the owner hires you, you're having you're a thought partner, and then are employees looking through the glass door in the conference room going like, who are these guys?
Well, the world's easier now because we're mostly on Zoom, right? So that helps a little bit, but then, you get introduced to some of the management team, and you just have to really be careful with that. You're absolutely right. Yep. You're onto something there, and you have to just kind of get to know them and learn a little bit from them before you kind of start teaching them anything.
Build a rapport, and yeah.
It's fundamental, important to learn first, right?
Yeah, that's cool. So
I was just gonna say, what are some of the things that you see at that phase that are like, man, this is a green light, or like a red light? You know what I mean? Like, this is like, alerts going off, or something. You go, man, these guys are gonna crush it.
Yeah. So at this early phase, we start with like an assessment, right? So we give someone a questionnaire, and it goes through maybe like 50 questions, and then it kind of shows their business in relation to like best practices from a strategy perspective. So between that and the original conversation, you can kind of see, where's their business at? Are there any red flags there? And then, do they have reasonable expectations? Are they willing to listen, right? Mm-hmm. And do they seem like they have a viable business, right? If not, one of our advice was, hey, you need to shut this business down, right? Sometimes that's the advice.
Dang.
Right? But hopefully that's not always the case. But between that upfront assessment that's pretty in-depth, and then getting to know somebody, you can just really understand, are they going to want to work with us? Do they want things that we can help with?
Yeah. And I would assume that if they can afford to hire you, that, well, I shouldn't assume that, ideally they're making money, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm sure that's how much does, when you get into the nuts and bolts of it, do you ever look at somebody's EBITDA and say, like, that's just too low, and let's work on getting that up there over the next
Well, I don't know. Not from like a will you take them as a client perspective. It's more about how viable is their business, and where do they want to get to? Is that something we can help with? I think that's more of what it is. And obviously, there's a price to our services, and it's not real cheap. But we think it's important. We think what we do is valuable, right? And we think because it's valuable, it's important to get that message out to people. So we found ways to do more like group coaching for a very low cost, do a little bit of like
That's
coaching
smart.
style strategy. Honestly, it's kind of like our view of capitalism, right? You give people information, you bring them along a little bit, but you let them self-actualize. And if they want to do something with that, that's great. If they don't, that's their decision. But it's just kind of like, you get paid a little bit to hopefully have an impact for people that can't afford the full deal.
I love it. Yeah. I already want to hire them for Eco Lips.
There's a reason why he's on the podcast today.
Oh, man.
So that's kind of like the beginning of the strategy part. And then so we'll get into the rest of the strategy stuff, but from there, then hopefully you can go create some efficiency in the business. So that's in terms of like profit, like every dollar that comes in, how much of that can you convert to profit? Obviously that's efficiency of cash flow. And then processes, right? That's a huge deal. How efficient are your processes? How well do people know their roles and responsibilities?
And you have knowledge of process. I mean,
If it gets to the point where you need to
optimization
redesign processes and really get in with like a lean expert, we'll go and bring someone else in. We're not gonna, go out of our swim lane, but working in big companies for a while, you just really appreciate the value of good process design. What are the key processes? How are those going? Just kind of like a before and after thing. And then if it gets into a total redesign, we'll say, hey, you need a professional to do that. We're not going to try to do more than we should.
Yeah, cool.
Just digging in there a little bit. What are some signs that you need a complete redesign of your systems or processes?
I'll just start with how you do things now, right? Can I see your process for this? And usually it's like, I can tell you what it is, but I can't show it to you, right? So that's
pretty obvious. There's
that's thing number one, right? Mm-hmm. And then what are your pain points? What kinds of things do you complain about? What do your employees complain about? Those are usually the smoke that indicates there's a fire, there's a process issue, there's something that could be systematized and simplified.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was a good question, Andy. Well, we need more good questions like that.
We're living it.
That's like the nuts and bolts of it. I know. I love it.
Right. So that kind of creates like the chassis, so to speak, right? So it's not like super sexy growth type stuff, but we think it's important to go in that order. So start with the strategy so you have everything to build around that, and then get to the efficiency part so you have a really good core to build on, a really good chassis, and then you can put the growth engine in there, right? Then you can really go places. So growth is kind of that next level. But I should say, like, that's kind of the interesting stuff, right? Strategy, efficiency, growth, culture. But we kind of got to back up because a lot of small businesses are honestly not sellable. And
really?
Yeah.
You're going to just say that on my podcast?
A lot of them are, but people need to know that. That was one of the main reasons I wanted to make a pivot in my career because I liked the big company M&A stuff. Yeah. But the bigger problem is a lot of people work their whole life, they create this business, and then they don't have as much to show for it when it stops. Right? Yeah. And that's a big problem. That's a problem for the community because who takes over that business? What happens with the jobs? It's a problem for the people who took risks and busted their butt. And it's just something that it doesn't get talked about. It's not real well known. So
it's interesting because there's local businesses specifically that I've seen close down. And I mean, some of it'd be a restaurant or a distributor or something. And I'm just like, but they did it for so long. There had to be some assets there. Like, why are they not selling this thing? Mm-hmm. And I never got it because I'm like, there's got to be a way to package it up and make it valuable to somebody.
Right. Often there is if you have the time and the forethought, right? But it's basically from a buyer's perspective, what does this look like from a buyer's perspective? What are the risks that they would care about when you're no longer associated with the business, right? At some point, whether you sell it, whether you transfer it, whether you go out feet first, like you're not part of the business anymore. And then are there processes that make it run? Are the customer relationships dependent on the owner, right? Is there a customer concentration thing? Whatever, right? There's a ton of risks like that. They might just have really bad financials. They might not know what's going on with the business.
Yeah.
That's really common, unfortunately.
Right.
So up front, when we kind of do that assessment, we try to see what those things are. And the first thing we do before we get into all the cool stuff is we want to de-risk the business, right? So is there something we need to do? Like sometimes we'll have to bring in our CFO and say, hey, we got to get these financials clean. We got to make it so that they can run the business on the financials. Or if the owner, everything's owner-centric, revolving around the owner, we got to say, hey, before we get too far here, we have to design this business so that if you're not here, it still thrives.
Right.
Or otherwise, no one's going to buy it because what a buyer wants is transferable cash flows. Mm-hmm. They want to know that the cash flow stream that your business is producing will survive after the sale, right? It'll transfer to them, and then that's why they want to buy it, right? So if they don't have confidence in that, it'd be foolish to buy it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember, when we sold Raining Rose, that was the big thing. It was like, oh, if Steve leaves, then is there still value here? And we proved that there was, obviously. But yeah, and buying Bug Soother, knowing that the founder, Frida, was going to leave Bug Soother, we acquired it last year. And similar deal. It was like, and actually, so we kept on anybody that from the company that would stay on, but specifically her son stayed on. And it was a nice... and he's still with us, and he's great. It was a great transitionary tool for us too. But it's like the customers can see that there's continuity, and so we had less to worry about because he stayed on.
Okay, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a huge risk mitigator. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the big thing, right? De-risk. get some strategy to guide everything else, build efficiency, build a strong core, grow on top of that. And then culture is super important. But culture, I mean, it takes so long that you should start on culture immediately, but you're not going to see the results until way out there, right? So it's kind of like a parallel
I'm
path.
surprised that you get into culture, actually.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, well, just most. I don't think of somebody that's good at strategy and finance. I mean, it tells me how important culture is to what you do and to business, because, I mean, I don't often hear somebody that knows how to read a P&L talk about culture.
That's why I'm a bad accountant and why I got into strategy, honestly. I mean, I know how it all works, but I like to take financial information and go figure out what to do with it. I want nothing to do with creating it, right? That's why we have a CFO on our team who goes and does that stuff for our clients. I don't do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's cool. Culture. So I mean, so how do you measure culture and how do you improve upon it? Like you said, it takes a long time, and we should all actually start right now with culture.
I mean, I think it all starts with the vision, the mission. What's the brand? What's the story? I mean, that's really the foundation of it. And then how do those things kind of influence what people do, why they do it, and then obviously having some core values about what's valuable in this company. Like those are kind of the building blocks that everybody knows about, and then it's just about keeping those things visible. So through like a management system, I think is a good way to instill culture, right? So we call it kind of like a culture of accountability. Everybody knows what they're supposed to do. They know why they're supposed to do it. They know what your values are, what your mission is. And then if they have KPIs that are tied to those results, that are tied to the strategies, that are tied to the vision and the mission, it's just one of those threads that kind of makes your everyday tasks tie back to the why. That's like 5 steps back, right? Yep. So that's kind of how we approach it. If there's a huge culture problem or like you got to start over, we'd get help with that, right? Because we're not, that's not our specialty.
You got to have a kumbaya circle. You got to bring in a shaman or something.
Right. You can give you an advice on how to go about and do that, right? Because I don't know. But right.
No, that's smart. That's smart.
Can I get you to just take a quick step back? You went through a lot of stuff really quickly there in terms of core values to, KPIs to, accountability. Can you just slow it down and say, okay, so we got you've established the core values, sort of mission, vision, values and stuff. What are some things that you do in terms of day-to-day activities that help get visibility to that, have different, just make sure that stays
You're asking
visible.
For free advice here.
Well,
that's
I can't afford it. I can't afford the regular rate, not that I'm getting paid from the Shriver podcast. We'll just get as much out of them as we can, and hopefully helpful to other people too.
There you go. Well, I mean, the number one thing is once you develop a strategy, we try to have this be a blend between something that's comprehensive and super valuable, but also actionable for a smaller business. So then the deliverables we have out of this are things that you can share with the company, right? So then you start with, hey, we haven't really talked about this, but here's our vision for the company. Here's our mission. Here's what we're excited about. And we hope you're excited about it too, right? So that's step number one. Just saying, okay, we did the strategic plan. Now we got to share it with people and start with that context and the why. So that's the first thing, right? And then from there, we can kind of go through the whole framework here, but it's going through and showing employees what you're doing, why you're doing it, where we're going to get to, and then how their job relates to it.
So, and I love this. So, like, I always use the Rockefeller Habits is a good book by Vern Harnish.
That's great. Yep.
Yeah, and one of the first business books I read was The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. I talk about that one a lot, and that's where I learned about strategic objectives and even brand and story and a lot of what you're talking about here. But I've also found that it has never really worked to just bring a book, make my management team read it, force us to follow the plan and do it, and it's like we're all energetic and hyped up, and then it's like slowly, and it's hard to be held accountable. I'm thinking that if you hire a company like yours, there's a little more accountability.
Right. So that kind of gets into the management system part. It's really tactical, but I think it helps with the topic we're talking about. Because you start with like this 3 to 5 year, that's kind of what you're talking about with the strategy. Where are we going? How are we going to get there, right? And then that says, you look at that, you're like, okay, well, this year, what do we have to do, right? So, and none of this is like, rocket science. It's just kind of packaging it so that it's actionable. So this year, what are we going to do? That's your plan for this year. And then that helps each quarter, we should be doing A, B, C. We got some rocks or some, Rockefeller the rocks, right? Yep. What are we doing there? And then what are the KPIs that each person has, each business area has? How are they going to go this quarter, right? So that's kind of like the culture of accountability, make sure that they know what they should be doing. But then it also comes down to getting that in front of your management team at an annual planning meeting at a quarterly management like strategic session, and then like monthly what's going on tactically, right? And then hopefully, you're doing some sort of weekly touch point that doesn't have to be as structured, I don't think.
How many of those are you at?
So it depends on what our clients want, right?
Okay.
So, we have various tiers. It depends on how much time they want to pay for, right? But generally, I think it works best if I'm doing like a weekly CEO session and then I'm with them and their management team in the monthly review. We look at the financials, we look at the KPIs, we look at the big rocks, and we kind of diagnose those. And then the quarterly. So if I'm involved with the monthly and the quarterly, at least for a while, eventually they're going to get the hang of it. They're just going to run with it. But if I can get them a lot of traction there, I think we're going to see good things.
Yeah. What if, so in part of, you said earlier, like you help put a team together if you notice that there's, somebody missing, or a gap in the executive team or something, or, how much of this is, really sort of, I guess, managing the managers or just, let's just say that you have put together a mediocre team in your business, or just like, it's really hard to find good people. What you're providing gonna, like, I guess, because the people are running the system and,
Right.
Can you have a lower tier person?
You could have a combination of all-stars and team players, right?
Okay.
And you probably should.
Okay.
Right. So that's kind of how we're
get
thinking about it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think you'll see that in like when it gets to the detailed roadmap phase. So we do all this strategic thinking, which is fun and interesting, but if we don't do anything about it, it doesn't matter, right? So we're very big on creating detailed roadmaps for the strategies that come out of this work. And the detailed roadmaps showed you what you're going to be doing. So one, it helps clarify, do I want to do this or not? Can I achieve it or not? And then who's going to do it? Right. So who are the people on my team that are going to run this? It's this very, very tactical piece, right? So you go from big picture strategy to very tactical, and that helps you know how to resource it. How does your org structure have to align to get that done? What investments do you need? And those things help make sure that you're prepared to go and get it done. And then that leads into what we were just talking about, the management system and the culture of accountability. So you kind of look at all that and you're like, well, I know exactly what I have to do. It's super clear now. Yep. I know who I have on my team. Are they the right people or are they not?
Yeah. Oh, wow. I love it.
Yeah.
Is it an option to just hire you for the annual planning session and just kind of whiteboard it out with us?
That's a good question. No, we never thought about that, but I don't know. That's a good question.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Okay.
I'll follow up with you on that question.
All right. Sounds good. Sounds good.
This is awesome. Is there any way we can share the framework?
We can definitely figure out how to get that
okay.
on
we can get it. Yep.
Okay.
Get that on the website, steveshriverpodcast.com. So
I love it.
You're just processing all this stuff.
I
aren't
know,
you?
it's crazy.
Too many businesses.
I thought you'd have more questions, to be honest with you.
Well, I've talked with Dan several times, and so
we haven't.
Yes, this is true. We have not.
I mean,
this is about it. I'm excited to have him on because I just think, where to start. We've talked about mission, vision, and values, and maybe do you have good? I mean, we've talked about the traction book before, or management system. Do you have set resources that you recommend to people to do a vision exercise or values exercise or things like that you can share?
For that, it's more. I think that's more about sitting down and doing it with somebody. Like you said, you could give someone a book and say, "Hey, go ahead and read this," and you might follow through, you might not. I think that's a lot more of a sitting down and talking through and asking some good questions, right? And taking your time, being patient. From a brand and story perspective, we really like the Donald Miller's story brand. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
On it. Nope.
But that is, it's a really good framework to say, all right, your brand is, you got to present it to your customers as a story, right? And by the way, you're not the hero, your customer's the hero. So stop emphasizing yourself, start emphasizing them. You kind of come along. You're Yoda, you're not Luke Skywalker, right? Your customer's Luke Skywalker, you're Yoda. He's facing a problem, he's got to solve it. You have a plan. You teach him the plan. You call him to action. You save him from failure. He saves the day, not you, right?
Right.
So it's a great book, and I think that's something that it's an easy read, easy listen, and people could just kind of run with that if they're looking for like a brand and story sort of thing.
That's cool. I'm ordering that as soon as we hang up here. Yeah. Yeah. So what's next for you? And I mean, like, are you growing your business? I mean, so you guys are scaling.
So Rob and I started working together about a year ago with Luna Venture Partners, and we haven't really, done any advertising, any marketing, anything. What we've been doing is Rob gets a steady stream of people who want to work with him because he's done a lot of really cool things, and people just reach out, right? that's kept us plenty busy. We're doing fine with that, but we didn't want to take on a higher workload until we knew we had the right systems in place ourselves, right? Yeah. So kind of eating our own cooking there, where we wanted to make sure we had the right people, the processes, the systems, so that we could deliver to our clients consistent, high quality results in an efficient way that makes our business valuable itself, right? Yeah. So we're at that point now, and now we're trying to say, all right, we think this is really good stuff. We think we can do it at a scale that's pretty big and make a huge impact and have a lot of fun.
You know what you need? You need a third party.
Yeah.
You got to hire a third party to help you build the framework for success. And I would like you to hire me to help you analyze and strategize.
It sounds like a great plan.
I'm kidding. No, it's funny though. Like you need to do with your, I mean, you guys obviously apply your principles to your own business and it,
right.
You know, that's great.
Right. No, for sure. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Can you describe like maybe the customers that you've worked with in like your large scale, but then on the small scale, you talked about the group training. Can you talk about those different types of customers and what types of businesses they run or size or whatever?
So Rob actually has a separate business that he runs that it's really about the group training thing, and it's called the Rob Luna Wealth Academy. He does a great job with that. It's pretty cool, honestly. It's for a low price point. And for the value, you can get as much value as you want out of that. So that's a great resource for people who they might only want to spend $100 a month and get a lot of value, right? They can go teach themselves and have a group coaching call. But then from the consulting business, from that perspective, we've worked with public companies recently. I mean, you know, we've done some pretty cool work there. But the bulk of where we work with is it's individually owned businesses, and it's people who like I said, they really want to build the business beyond themselves. So I think we've had the most luck with people who already have a good foundation and they have the desire, but they don't have like the plan. They don't know how to go do it. They don't know how to act on it. But they, you know, revenue size has been maybe 10 to 30 million on average for those types of clients. But we don't really define it like that. We really define it as like, do you want what we want? Can we help you get there?
Yeah. And I've never met anybody that does what you do, to be honest, which is it's great. Who are your competitors? I mean, because I know that like the big accounting firms probably have some, you know, strategy, you know, departments,
right,
that kind of thing. But
you know, every mid-sized CPA firm wants to be advisors, right? So they'll go in and they'll say, hey, we can help you with this, we can help you with that, right? So they're probably a competitor, but it's a different type of service, probably, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the most direct thing that we kind of benchmark ourselves against is more like Bain, McKinsey, BCG, that sort of thing. I mean, I've worked with them extensively on huge projects in the past, so I know how they work, and there's really sharp people there. Our people are the same caliber. We just focus on a smaller business size. They want to have $5 million engagements. Yep. You know, we're fine with helping more smaller businesses and help them go and achieve something great.
That's cool. I love it. I want to hire you. Just that's it. So, man, Dan Bensema. Great. Luna Venture Partners. This is awesome. I don't know if you had any. Did you have any additional?
Nope. I'm good. Dan, we'll get your info out there, but where can people find you?
Oh, so Dan at lunavp.com is my email address. I'm not really a LinkedIn guy, but I just joined Instagram. So Dan Bensema on Instagram. You can check me out on there. I just found Steve. Looks like some interesting things you're up to, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, I get a little weird.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. Weird people are cool.
Yeah. Oh, man. So, Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. And, man, this is all just sinking in right now. This is definitely one of my favorite episodes that we've done, and definitely I feel like you got to be a great thought partner because you got me thinking. You know, so
that's good. Well, thanks for having me. It was good to hang out for a little bit, and hopefully this helps the audience.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us, and have a great week.
The Steve Shriver Podcast is brought to you by EcoLips, the original organic lip balm. Use the promo code PODCAST20 for 20% off your first order on ecolips.com. Keep up with the show at steveshriverpodcast.com and the Steve Shriver Podcast on Facebook.